So where would you give a recommendation for people to do a research contribution? So the options are academia, so get a PhD, spend 5 years publishing. Compute resources are constrained. There's research labs that are more focused on open weight models, and so working there, or closed frontier labs, research labs. OpenAI, Anthropic, XAI, so
on. The two gradients are the more closed, the more money you tend to get, but also you get less credit. So in terms of building a portfolio of things that you've done, like it's very clear of what you have done as an academic, and you have done this. And versus if you are going to go trade this fairly reasonable progression for being a cog in the machine, which could also be very fun. So I think it's very different career paths, but the opportunity cost for being a researcher is very high because PhD students are paid essentially nothing. So I think it ends up rewarding people that have a fairly stable safety net, and they realize that they can operate in the long term, which is they want to do very interesting work and get a very interesting job. So it is it's a privileged position to be like, I'm going to see out my PhD and figure it out after because I want to do this. And I think a lot of at the same time, the academic ecosystem is getting bombarded by funding getting cut and stuff. So there's just so many different trade-offs where I understand plenty of people that are like, oh, I can't deal with this funding search. Grant got cut for no reason by the government, or I don't know what's going to happen. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty and trade-offs that, in my opinion, favor just take the well-paying job with meaningful impact. So it's not also you're getting paid to sit around at OpenAI. You're building the cutting edge of things that are changing millions of people's relationship to tech.
But publication-wise, they're being more secretive, increasingly so. So you're publishing less and less and less and less, and so you are having a positive impact at scale, but you're a cog in the machine.
I think honestly, it hasn't changed that much. So I've been in academia. I'm not in academia anymore. At the same time, I wouldn't want to miss my time in academia. But what I wanted to say before I get to that part, I think it hasn't changed that much. I was working in, I was using AI or machine learning methods for applications in computational biology with collaborators. And a lot of people went from academia directly to Google. And I think it's the same thing. Back then, the professors were sad that their students went into industry because they couldn't carry on their legacy in that sense. And I think it's the same thing. It's it hasn't changed, I think, that much. The only thing that has changed is the scale. But, cool stuff was always developed in industry that was closed. You couldn't talk about it. And I think the difference now is, your preference. Do you like to talk about your work, publish, or, you are more in a closed lab? That's one difference, the compensation, of course, but it's always been like that, I think. So it really depends on, where you feel comfortable. And it's also nothing is forever. The only thing right now is there's a third option, which is starting a startup. That's a lot of people doing startups. Very risky move, but can be is a high risk, high reward type of situation where joining an industry lab, I think, is pretty safe. Also upward mobility. Honestly, I think if once you have been at a industry lab, it will be easier to find future jobs. But then again, it's how much do you enjoy the team and working on proprietary things versus how do you like the publishing work? I mean, publishing is stressful. It is, acceptance rate at conferences can be arbitrary, can be very frustrating, but also high reward. If you have a paper published, you feel good because your name is on there, you have a high accomplishment, and
I feel like my friends who are professors seem on average happier than my friends who work at a frontier lab, to be totally honest, because that's just grounding, and the frontier labs definitely do this 996, which essentially is shorthand for work all the time.
Yep. Can you describe 996 as culture that's, I believe you could say, invented in China and adopted in Silicon Valley? What's 996? It's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and
6 days a week.
6 days a week. What is that? 72 hours? Okay. So what is this basically the standard in AI companies in Silicon Valley? More and more this kind of grind mindset?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not exactly like that, but I think there is a trend towards it. And it's interesting. I think it almost flipped, because when I was in academia, I felt like that because as a professor, you had to write grants, you had to you had to teach, and you had to do your research. It's like 3 jobs in one, and it is more than a full-time job if you want to be successful. And I feel like now, like Nathan just said, the professors, in comparison to a lab, I think they have less, like even maybe pressure or workload than at a frontier lab,
I think
because
they work a lot. They're just so
yeah,
fulfilled by like
yeah,
working with
okay.
students and having a constant runway of mentorship and like a mission that is very people oriented. I think in an era when things are moving very fast and are very chaotic is very rewarding to people.
Yeah, and I think at a startup, I think it's this pressure. It's like you have to make it, and it's like it is really important that people put in the time. But well, it is really hard because you have to deliver constantly. And I've been at a startup. I had a good time, but I don't know if I could do it forever. It's like a interesting pace, and it's exactly like we talked about in the beginning. These models are leapfrogging each other, and they are just constantly like trying to take the next step compared to the competitors. It's just ruthless, I think, right now.
I think this leapfrogging nature and having multiple players is actually an underrated driver of language modeling process where competition is so deeply ingrained to people, and these companies have intentionally created very strong culture. Like Anthropic is known to be so culturally like deeply committed and organized. I mean, like we hear so little from them, and everybody at Anthropic seems very aligned. And it's like being in a culture that is super tight and having this competitive dynamic is like talk about a thing that's going to make you work hard and create things that are better. So I think that but that comes at the cost of human capital, which is like you can only do this for so long, and people are definitely burning out. I think I wrote a post on burnout as I've tried in and out of this myself, especially trying to like be a manager of full mode training. It's a crazy job doing this. The book Apple in China by Patrick McGee, he talked about how hard the Apple engineers worked to set up the supply chains in China. And he was like, they had saving marriage programs. And he told in a podcast, he was like, people died from this level of working hard. So I think that's just like, it's a perfect environment for creating progress based on human expense. And there's going to be there's a lot of, the human expense is the 996 that we started this with, which is like people do really grind.
I also read this book. I think they had a code word for if someone had to go home to spend time with their family to save the marriage. And it's crazy. Then the colleagues understand, okay, this is like red alert for this situation. We have to let that person go home this weekend. And but at the same time, I don't think they were forced to work. It's really, they were so passionate about the product, I guess, that it is you get into that mindset. And I had that sometimes as an academic, but also as an independent person, I have that sometimes. I overwork, and it's unhealthy. I had back issues, I had neck issues because I did not take the breaks that I maybe should have taken. But it's not because no one forced me to. It's because I wanted to work, because it's
that's what
exciting stuff.
OpenAI and Anthropic are like. They want to do this work.
Yeah, but there's also a feeling, a fervor that's building, especially in Silicon Valley, aligned with the scaling laws idea, where there's this hype where the world will be transformed on a scale of weeks, and you want to be at the center of it. And then I have this great fortune of having conversations with a wide variety of human beings. And from there, I get to see all these bubbles and echo chambers across the world. And it's fascinating to see how we humans form them. And I think it's fair to say that Silicon Valley is a kind of echo chamber, a kind of silo and bubble. I think bubbles are actually really useful and effective. It's not necessarily a negative thing, because it could be ultra productive. It could be the Steve Jobs reality distortion field, because you just convince each other the breakthroughs are imminent, and by convincing each other of that, you make the breakthroughs imminent.
Bern Hobart wrote a book classifying bubbles, but essentially one of them is financial bubbles, which is like speculation, which is bad. And the other one is like, I don't know the term, but effectively for build outs, because it pushes people to build these things. And I do think AI is in this, but I worry about it transitioning to a financial bubble, which is like,
Yeah, but also in the space of ideas, that bubble, you are doing a reality distortion field, and that means you are deviating from reality. And if you go too far from reality, while also working, 996, and you might miss some fundamental aspects of the human experience, including in Silicon Valley. And this is a common problem in Silicon Valley. Is like, is a very specific geographic area. You might not understand the Midwest perspective, the full experience of all the other different humans in the United States and across the world, and you speak a certain way to each other, you convince each other of a certain thing, and that can get you into real trouble. Whether AI is a big success and becomes a powerful technology, or it's not, in either trajectory, you can get yourself into trouble. So you have to consider all of that. Here you are, a young person trying to decide what you want to do with your life.
The thing that is, I don't even really understand this, but the SF AI memes have gotten to the point where permanent underclass was one of them, which was the idea that the last 6 months of 2025 was the only time to build a durable value in an AI startup or model. Otherwise, all the value will be captured by existing companies and you will therefore be poor, which, like, that's an example of the SF thing that goes so far. I still think for young people that going to be able to tap into it, if you are really passionate about wanting to have an impact in AI, like being physically in SF is the most likely place where you're going to do this, but it has trade-offs.
I think SF is an incredible place, but there is a bit of a bubble. And if you go into that bubble, which is extremely valuable, just get out also. Read history books, read literature, visit other places in the world. Twitter is not, and Substack is not the entire world.
I think I would say one of the people I worked with is moving to SF, and it's like I need to get him a copy of The Season of the Witch, which is a history of SF from like 1960 to 1985, which goes through like the hippie revolution, like all the gays kind of taking over the city and that culture emerging, and then the HIV/AIDS crisis and other things. And it's just like that is so recent and so much turmoil and hurt, but also like love in SF. And it's like no one knows about this. It's a great book, Season of the Witch. I recommend it. A bunch of my SF friends who do get out recommended it to me, and I think that it's just like living there. Like I lived there and I didn't appreciate this context, and it's just like so recent.